Okay, let's go even deeper into The Irishman and what it means for the death of cinema, the death of the artist, and what Scorsese's trying to say. I know a lot of people are kind of like, you're in too deep, brother, you're going down the rabbit hole. Fair enough, but here's the thing. Scorsese has said time and time again the importance of film language, film grammar, how to read it.
I think you really need to know how ideas and emotions are expressed through a visual form. At the same time, the respect for the language of cinema itself, the history should be taught, and the visual literacy should be taught, because there are others who are not going to be able to do that.
Because there's not just one moment that encapsulates kind of the theme of the death of cinema and the death of art or the artist. There's many scattered throughout the film, and to actually read this film properly, you really have to know the work of Ingmar Bergman. Scorsese was a huge fan of Bergman.
Every time a Bergman film came out, which was very frequent, you knew that there was another level you had to reach to with him, where he was going to take you. He may leave you behind a little, a lot maybe, but you knew that there's something special that you were going to see.
To understand The Irishman's in context with the medium and the death of art, look no further than the structure. The structure is identical to Ingmar Bergman's own meditation on death, Wild Strawberries, where a man takes a day trip, not unlike Frank Sheeran and Russell Buffalino, and as he does, he starts confronting the death of himself and the death of the form as Bergman starts deviating from linearity and deviating from the protagonist's reality, and he starts getting into a subconscious domain. And if you think, oh man, you're reading into this too much, bro, you gotta chill out. No, it literally borrows dialogue from Wild Strawberries. Russell is reciting the same things that Dr. Isaac Borg in Wild Strawberries does throughout the film.
Russ wouldn't allow nobody to smoke in his car, not even Carrie.
Yeah, now I can't smoke on... Alright, now I can't smoke.
Rök inte, är du hygglig. Jag kan inte fördra cigarettrök.
Jag glömde det.
Det borde vara lag på att fruntimmer inte fick röka.
In fact, there's even shots that are identical to it.
I owe you anything?
No, you don't owe me anything.
Hur mycket blev det hela nu då?
Eva och jag, vi bjuder på den här soppan.
Och kommer aldrig.
So Scorsese is trying to create a dialectic with his previous generation of filmmakers in lineage with themes surrounding death and death of the form, because what Bergman was known for was kind of transforming cinema in a surreal way, in a way that was considered almost like heresy, but also the dialectic surrounding the medium and the modality of mediums, in the sense that Scorsese is working knowingly in television and streaming versus cinema, quote unquote, itself. And you might ask, why Bergman? Why not reference any other director that dealt with, mortality through the art form and through the language? Well, there's a reason why. Ingmar Bergman was one of the first directors, really serious directors, to go from cinema to television with Fanny and Alexander and Scenes from a Marriage that actually broadcast on Swedish networks. So Scorsese is in many ways justifying maybe his own graduation into streaming and television and that form by referencing another master that took his place. Okay, in this one I want to talk about the characters as representations of death, right? Because Scorsese is so invested in this idea, as made clear by the first part of the video where I talk about how he's in reference to Wild Strawberries, another meditation on death and the afterlife and mortality. And in this one, I want to talk about how Scorsese cultivates a kind of a triptych. Triptych is kind of like a painting where you're seeing three of one representation. In this one, the triptych is simple. It's Russell, Frank Sheeran, and Jimmy Hoffa. And what is he trying to do by creating this trifecta? He's carving out another subtextual idea that may seem invisible, but is actually quite strong. Consider that Scorsese is not just in conversation with film history, he's in conversation with history itself. And what do I mean by that? I mean, what predated cinema was theater. So a lot of the modality of cinema comes directly from the live performance. So Scorsese is creating a kind of dichotomy between two kind of actors. Let's talk about Al Pacino, who came from theater, right? He's got that theatricality to his performance that is so prominent in The Irishman. And then you have Joe Pesci, who's born in cinema, right? He's an actor that was born from cinema, and his performance is stoic. It's kind of rigid, it's kind of creepy, it's scary. And what Scorsese does is he places Frank right in the middle, right? Between these two characters, these two antagonists in many ways. And so you might say, oh, that's a read, man, it's not about theatricality. Well, consider that Jimmy Hoffa is introduced usually with red drapes in the background, red curtains, right? Scorsese is talking about not just the death of cinema, but the death of the art forms that preceded cinema. Right? So in the same way that we're looking at death of cinema, oh, what was cinema? It's dying. Yeah, but here's the thing. Cinema killed theater in many ways. In the 1920s, when vaudeville and live arts kind of got supplanted by cinema, theater people were going through the same wreckage that we are today as film lovers, where it's like, whoa, you murdered our art form. Or you maybe didn't murder it, but it's like it's dying. And that's why the whole plot of The Irishman is about killing Jimmy Hoffa, killing the theatrical modality that cinema is guilty of, in the same way that television and streaming is kind of responsible for the death of cinema. That's why the scene at Frank's celebration it gives me chills, because you see Russell talking to Jimmy with the blood red drapes in the background. and Frank Sheeran looking over across at them being like, what's happening? It's like, you see it. It's important to note that this is the first time Scorsese has both men in the room at the same time. And of course, what's playing in the background? The Gold Diggers, The Time Is Now, which was a band that was on Dean Martin's variety show, another nod and tip of the hat to television and the incorporation of television in this story. And notice how Scorsese knowingly frames the theatrical premise, how the chandelier takes on the shape of a crown over his head, as if he's being dethroned, or better yet, it looks like a halo, like he's an angel. It's very Shakespearean, it's very theatrical. That's what makes Scorsese such a great artist. He's not just in conversation with himself, like so many directors these days. He's in conversation with the entire lineage of cinema.
What it made me realize was that there was an intelligence that was trying to tell a story through where the director, the writer, and the cinematographer, where they were focusing your eyes.
If you know Scorsese's oeuvre, you'll know that Scorsese is the king of breaking the fourth wall. He does it in a lot of films. Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas. He loves it when a character looks directly to the camera. That's what breaking the fourth wall is. And Scorsese does it very minutely in The Irishman, but he does it in a way that is so subtle in this scene that I had to rewatch the film like 3 times in the theater just to catch it, because it really gets lost on a smaller screen. You gotta see the eye line. Eye line is the way the eye directs from past the camera. Look at the way Robert De Niro as Frank Sheeran looks past the shoulder of Russell into the camera at the moment when Russell asks Frank to take him out.
Frank, I had to put you into this thing, or you would never let it happen. And I know you wouldn't. Either way, he's going. I know how you feel, Frank. Trust me, I know how you feel. I told you before, we tried everything to help him. You know that. You tried. He brought this on himself. And it's landing on us. The only reason they agreed to this was out of respect to me.
It is, I think, one of the most intimate moments between a character and an audience that Scorsese has made since maybe Taxi Driver, where Frank is looking at us and he knows that we're in on this. He knows that we're in on the death of it by being the sheer participants to what Scorsese is what Russell is requesting. Russell, by the way, looks like a doppelganger to Scorsese in this shot. Like, look at his glasses, look at his slick back hair. He looks like Scorsese. So Scorsese is also in conversation with the audience, saying, hey, I know I'm part of the death of cinema by even contributing to the Netflix lineage and series and streaming platform, but hey, look, let's try to create a bit of an intimacy between Frank, a cipher to these two characters, and us. After Hoff is hit, Scorsese almost like confesses his complicity in the death of the art form of cinema with this scene, which in many ways is a harrowing inversion of the wedding scene in The Godfather, right? Both wedding scenes, both look diametrically opposite. One is full of life and flavor. This one is dead cold. It plays at like 120 frames per second. You can see every disgusting detail. It reminds me of Quentin Matisse's The Ill-Matched Marriage, right? So there's a collective experience in both these films. In Coppola's The Godfather, the collective experience of the wedding is in many ways a mirror to the collective experience of film going. We're all in this together. In The Ill-Matched Marriage, aka the wedding scene in The Irishman, oh, it's dark. No one wants to go to that wedding. No one wants to be part of that collective experience, which could be why, there's another tip of the hat to the television medium, which is the close-up on Ray Romano, right? Everybody loves Raymond. Apparently not, because this scene is like, he looks grotesque. Everyone looks grotesque in this scene. And again, it's I think Scorsese trying to talk about the medium. When cinema went from the big screen to television, what happened in that transformation? What happened with that migration? And that's why Scorsese cuts from the wedding to Frank Sheeran's daughter watching television, and she's repulsed by it all. And just look at how Scorsese's framing them. He's choosing to frame Sheeran's family from the perspective of the television set in the living room. And they all look atomized. And what happened when film migrated to television? And what does it mean for the collective experience? And guess what? The Irishman is all about collectivism, right? Solidarity. Solidarity! So it's not only just about the collectivism and the solidarity that exists amongst, Hoffa supporters. It's about the collectivism and the solidarity that Scorsese was witness to and also benefactor of for so many years as a filmmaker. So it's so interesting to see him go through this transformation of the form in the film itself. And I think Scorsese is the kind of artist that he's taking time to make these pieces of work so that you can read into them, that they are rich subtextually. Because if he was just making a film about a guy dying and, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting, and I don't think it would have the longevity that all of his films actually do have.
What you're doing is training the eye and the heart of the student to look at a film in a different way by asking questions and pointing to different ideas, different concepts, suggestions. You're training them to think about a story that's told to you in visual terms in a different way.